How do everybody? So I saw this headline yesterday, and I'm sure a lot of you have already seen it. And I just thought to myself, well, in other news, water is confirmed to be wet. And this is simply the statement that it's been said, and I'll read you the headline here. Slashing migration will make Britons nearly £1,200 per year better off. Obviously, like you do not need a PhD in economics to understand that basic concept, especially when so many people that are moving to the UK a, a net drain on the country. It absolutely makes complete sense that people, and I bet 1,200 per year is a massive understatement. You know, now I'm not saying that we should be stopping actual doctors and actual engineers and actual CEOs from coming to the country, but they are not the overwhelming majority of people who are coming to the country. You know, in the last, I think, 3 or 4 years, we've had 100,000 illegal migrants come over, at least in rubber dinghies. Those people aren't doctors and engineers and CEOs. The overwhelming majority of those people are incapable of even writing their own name in their mother language. They are completely illiterate in their mother tongue. So to expect them to do anything other than be a complete and utter drain on our society is just for is pie in the sky thinking. Anyway, let's crack on with this. Britons could save more than £1,100 every year if net migration is reduced, new analysis suggests. Research by the Growth Commission, which is set to be published this week, says slashing migration numbers will improve living standards over the long term. Now, I've got to be clear, I think this Growth Commission was set up by Liz Truss when she was Prime Minister. So I think a lot of this will be addressing some of the claims that she was making in regards to the type of economic changes she was trying to make. Now, I'm not a fan of Liz Truss. I'm going to be very clear about this. However, I do think that she got a bit of a raw deal from the media, and I do think she was kind of blaming things that weren't her fault. I do think she was stitched up by media and industry and the Bank of England. I do believe that there is an unofficial cabal of these special interest pro EU groups. It's like the other day there was a report from what was it, Goldman Sachs, saying that Britain's doing terribly since leaving the EU. And what a lot of people fail to remember though is that Goldman Sachs massively funded the Remain campaign and campaigned heavily to try and keep us in the EU. So we've got to be very, very aware that there is actually, I do believe, a conspiracy of these. Although I don't believe it's necessarily an organised group of people, I just think it's very like-minded people, all with a sort of a nod and a wink. They don't need to necessarily be highly organised to all sort of behave in the same way. In the same way that a football riot isn't necessarily organised, it's just a bunch of like-minded people all going feeding off each other's sort of unspoken cues to behave in a particular manner. But sorry, back to my point anyway, with Liz Truss, at the same time, all the European economies were collapsing as well. So, American economy's been tanking at the same time. Like global economies are all tanking. So it's hardly Liz Truss's fault that our economy was also tanking. But I do think she still made a lot of silly mistakes. Anyway, the new analysis, which comes ahead of the spring budget, also found that scrapping inheritance tax would see a larger increase in per capita GDP than an equivalent cut to income tax. I fully agree with that. I really do. And there might be people saying, "Oh, why shouldn't people pay inheritance tax?" Or, "Oh, you only want to keep your money for yourself." I was like, well, inheritance tax doesn't actually even affect me. I'm nowhere near that amount of money, but I'm not a jealous individual. And if I was in that point where I was falling into the bracket of inheritance tax, why would I stay in the UK? Why would I not move my assets overseas and move somewhere where I'm not going to pay the tax? Because when you're that wealthy, you have the means, especially in the modern world, where you can change your bank account by literally just going online and spending 2 minutes. You can have everything changed with the click of a button. It's all done. Why would you pay the tax? So we may as well just bite the bullet, give everybody fair tax. And on the conversely, though, I think like things like income tax should be, the threshold should be massively raised. To like 30 or £40,000. So that would benefit well over like 70-80% of the population straight away. Would be keeping thousands and thousands of pounds every year in the pocket. So it's not just helping. Which somebody who's paying inheritance tax, that's it's a minuscule amount of money. Although they would benefit from it as well. It's not really a massive win for them. But the inheritance tax, help everybody out. We should all be winning together. I don't think it's an us versus them. It should just be an us and us. You know, at all different levels. But you also find as well that when you start charging people less tax at the higher levels, and by the way, something like the top 1% of society, like like the really wealthiest people, they pay over 40% of all income tax. So they disproportionately spend a lot of money, put a lot of money into the exchequer. So anything we can do to encourage those people to keep more of their money in the country, believe it or not, will result in more tax revenue, even though they're paying less in tax, because they're sending the money elsewhere to pay less tax anyway. We might as well encourage them to bring the money back here to then pay that lower level of tax over here instead of paying that lower level of tax elsewhere. It's just, it makes it completely economically illiterate to try and tax people into oblivion, especially like I say in the modern era. It's not 1920s where like Rockefeller was paying 90% tax on his wealth. There was nothing he could really do at that point because all his money was in assets and actual stacks of cash and gold. He couldn't just pick it up and move it instantly. But like somebody like Richard Branson, his wealth doesn't exist in money. It's just numbers on a computer screen. So all he has to do is just ring up another bank and move those digits from one computer screen to another computer screen. It makes no sense to actually try and tax. We just can't do that sort of tax warfare anymore on people. Just can't do it. Ex-Prime Minister Liz Truss launched a commission. Oh, there we go. Yes, as I said, last year to investigate ways to boost Britain's economic growth. The study, I mean, that's one good thing that she did do is that she set this up. Like for things that she did get wrong, she did this. The study modelled a reduction in Britain's annual net migration from 315,000 in 2028 to a figure of 150,000. I mean, that is such an underestimate for what was happening. And at this time, she'll have known that we had 1.5 million people gross coming to the UK, 700, about 700,000 net staying in the UK. So for him to go with a number of 315,000 is just ludicrously low. Like that is so disingenuous of them to do that. And I suppose they had to do that to try and hide the fact of how bad it was at the time because they were still in full denial mode then. Research suggests the move would cut GDP by 2.4% by 2045, but raise GDP per capita by 2.1% in the same year. So everybody would be wealthier and better off. So there's less people. What that basically means is, as a whole, there'll be less people in the country, which means less work is actually getting done. But the people who are left in the country will, on average, be more skilled individuals who individually produce more wealth. So that means the average is raised because you've cut a lot of the chaff off and got rid of them. And we should be doing that. Like there's people who've been living in the country for like 40, 50 years who moved here from wherever they've come from. They've never worked a day in their life, and half of them don't even speak English. What the hell are they doing here? We should be getting rid of them. They're just a net drain on society, and that again would improve per capita GDP massively, absolutely massively. Based on 2023 prices, this would be a £1,157 boost per person per year. We can't grumble at that. There's holiday every year paid for right there, just by cutting immigration or getting rid of some people. It's like your actual standard of living will improve. You will visually see it happening. In conclusion, the group said high migration reduced per capita GDP as it increased the UK population, putting additional strain on the housing market. I mean, that's also true as well. Now I don't know with this if it's included things like like the cost of rent going up or mortgage. Like people having to pay even more for houses. I was speaking to one of the guys at work, and the house he's bought, I won't go into actual facts and figures, but he's paid literally more than twice. I bought my house in 2013. He literally paid more than twice what I paid for my house. It's absolutely crazy for comparable size property. Different towns where we've bought, but it's just absolutely insane. Couldn't believe it when he told me the price. As housing demand surge, prices increase, which as a result slashes disposable income. Yeah, well, there we go, yeah. And consumer power needs to stimulate the economy, research said. Yeah, but they also need to be looking as well like the energy firms. So it's like, I think it was British Gas last year. Sorry, the previous year they made something like 75 million profits. And then last year it was like 790 million in profits. That needs looking at it. The same with Tesco as well. Like the previous year it was like 100 million in profit. And then recent years, something like 500, 600 million in profits. Again, we are absolutely being gouged to death by these firms, these big, large companies who have raised all the prices because of things like lockdown and that. Whether it was justifiable for them to do that or not is one thing, but then they're not bringing the prices down. So again, we're being shafted on all fronts. We've tried to move the migration argument away from crude assertions on all sides to more carefully quantified estimates of its economic effects. He told the Telegraph. Yeah, well, it's also like things like if I'm going off memory here, I believe it's the Pakistani community particularly, although I could be wrong. It may also include the Bangladeshi and certain Indians as well. But they are over 50% of them, and I think it's Deobandis, over 50% of them are engaged in cousin marriages, first cousin marriages, and the also overwhelming majority of them descend from cousin marriages as well. And they are responsible, although they are 1% of the UK population, they're responsible for 30% of people with serious needing full-time care, disability problems, and genetic issues. So that, I mean, we've also got those sorts of costs as well that need to be factored in and looked at. You know, it's this migration, and for various reasons with various foreign communities, is costing us an absolute fortune for all the different things. Ultimately, the answer is to reform the planning system, but 3,240 pages of rules won't be reformed overnight. Well, they can be. You can just burn them, which is why it doesn't make sense to slow. Which is why it makes sense to slow down net migration. Yeah, absolutely does. I mean, slow it down. It should just be frozen, stopped. Index. Same with refugees, same with asylum seekers, the lot, just stop it all. The Growth Commission also monitored how tax cuts would affect growth. It found that decreasing corporation tax or removing inheritance tax would see a bigger boost than altering income tax. Just do it all. Do the lot. Why pick and choose? Just do the lot, because you end up with more. It's been proven time and time again through history. You cut taxes, you get more tax revenue in the long term. Disregarding inheritance tax would deliver 1.4% increase, a £757 boost, yeah, because people will be keeping the wealth in the country, meaning that they're spending more money in this country and it's getting interest, which is taxed, and, you know, they are actually paying tax on it rather than it being elsewhere in another country. So although you're giving them a tax break, they end up paying more in tax, you know. The higher rates would also deliver just a 0.3% increase. Well, sorry, a boost. So while cutting income tax by about 50 pence off the basic rate and similar amounts to the higher rate would deliver just a 0.3% increase. Yeah, but do it as well. You know, it's microeconomics. It adds up. You know, 0.3% over a 10-year period is cumulatively is a lot of money. You know, it's like saying £163. You know, over a 10-year period, that's £1,620 right there in your pocket. You know, it's, you know, they don't. It's not always. You know, it's like this with all things. You know, it's the cumulative effect of all of them combined which produces massive results, and that's how they should be thinking, rather than saying, "Oh, a little bit here." We shan't bother with that one because that one's on its own just tiny. Like, so what? All these little tiny pieces together make a big, massive mosaic. McWilliams added, before we ran the analysis, I was not convinced that abolishing inheritance tax was a good idea, but the research is pretty persuasive, showing that the tax had bad effects on savings, which leads to an exodus of high taxpayers and encourages early retirement. So yes, you're losing people out of the skills market as well, you know, because they're retiring earlier, you know, so they can either spend the money or pass it on to the loved ones in a time where they're not going to have to pay the inheritance tax. I mean, I suppose the way around it as well is to create a trust fund. I think you pay a one-off payment of, I think it's, don't quote me, but I think it's about £1,000, something like that. Create a trust fund. You've got to do it, I think, 8 years before you die. If you end up, I think if you die before that happens, it then comes back under inheritance tax rules. I am not an accountant. That is not financial advice. I'm be very clear on that. Do seek financial advice if you're interested in that. But I do believe if you do want to try and avoid legally, I can't remember if it's avoidance or evasion. I can't remember which one's the legal one. I think it's avoidance. If you want to do the legal one anyway, I believe that it is a trust fund is the way to do it. With an ageing population and with so many other countries with low or zero rates of inheritance tax, keeping this tax for purely ideological reasons looks to be a luxury the UK cannot afford. Well, it's just the entire country's just been mismanaged for decades now, absolute decades, and we're seeing the results of it, not just on the streets with the protests, but with the fact that the country is just hemorrhaging money, and we're becoming a joke. We're just seeing the high street collapsing, people's standards of living collapsing, prices going up, wages staying stagnant. We're a joke nation. We're an economic wealth extraction zone as well, and that's part of the microeconomic problem. Well, you know, the millions of people now living here who constantly sending £10 a year, £20 there, you know, back every week. It all adds up. It all adds up, and it makes us poorer. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. It's coming up 15 minutes. I didn't expect it to be anywhere near this long, this video, so I'll get going. If you've found that insightful, interesting, all that good stuff, please do like, subscribe. Definitely put a comment below. I love reading your comments, and I do always try to get back to them as quick as possible. Thank you very much. Goodbye.